Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and today I'd like to talk about the babies that were born in March 2025. And while most astrology videos focus in on a sign or a element, I want to focus in on the month of March, which will traverse the Pisces energy as well as the Aries energy. If you're new to astrology, all you need to know is your child's birthday. I believe that this video is important because the children that are being born in the 2020s, specifically 2024, 2025, 2026, and on, they are coming in with a completely new vibration, a completely new frequency, and an awareness of who they are on a soul level. And the months of March, or the month of March, to me is extremely powerful if a child is born at this time in 2025, because certain planets have not been in these positions for hundreds of years. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to talk about the outer planets, which is Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, representing a stage for the world to walk upon. It's going to cover the idea that Uranus brings in awakenings and innovation and new technologies. Neptune brings in a sense of creativity, a sense of spirituality, and also a great sense of compassion and empathy. Pluto is the great transformer, literally bringing forth the death of the ego and the birth of the soul into the physical experience as it goes through Aquarius. The inner planets, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, they represent the character traits of your child, how they are going to perceive the world. The sun is the I am, or the ego, their identity. The moon is how they feel and how they emote. Mercury is how they think and communicate. Venus is how they feel about their confidence, about their skills, and their belonging. And then Mars is how they take action. The semi-personal planets move a little bit slower. Jupiter takes about a year in each sign, 12 years to go around the zodiac, maybe 12 and a half with retrogrades. And Saturn takes 2 years to go through each sign, which can, with retrogrades, be about 28 to 30 years. So the idea that they're coming in at this time with the certain planetary configurations, and I'm going to bring up the chart and show it to you, is very important. We also see that at the time of March 2025, the children that are born at that time, there was a nodal shift. The South Node went into Virgo and the North Node moved into Pisces. This would very much indicate a life path, a karmic intention. The South Node represents habits. So we have the soul is familiar with certain beliefs and certain ways of operating. And in that familiarity, it's a slippery slope to fall back to your default, which in Virgo would be to analyze things, to overthink things, to worry about things, to be stuck in certain processes or certain habits that don't actually serve the expansion of the soul. The North Node in Pisces is very much what you're stretching for in this lifetime, this spiritual experience, this expression of creativity, almost a freedom to feel the energies of others and express it through the divine voice. That's the way I'd like to put that. The North Node is an experience we're not familiar with. It's actually quite uncomfortable. And yet at the same time, there is a real desire, a ravenous feeling to want to experience that. We also see that Chiron is very important. Chiron represents the chronic wound that really can never be released, but rather transformed into wisdom. And it is something that ends up turning into a gift once it has walked the journey of transformation and enlightenment. So let me pull up the chart for March. I'm not going to go through each day of the month. I'm just going to go through it periodically and show you certain important dynamics. So we start the month with what's called a stellium, which is a group of planets in one sign or house. Here in Pisces, we see the sun, we see Saturn, we see Mercury, and we see Neptune. Neptune and Mercury and the North Node are all at what they call anaretic degrees at this time, which means that they are an extremely tense master class of awareness, of, of communication, of expressing creativity. We could very much see songwriters here. We could see poets here. We could see initially in youth a challenge with learning in old ways. And yet, as we create learning systems that play to the creativity of your child, for instance, history to music, or lessons that involve creating, using the imagination. And those are the things that will help the child anchor in their lessons. Saturn in Pisces is an interesting dynamic in the birth chart because Saturn really rules a slowdown, a having to endure a certain journey of responsibility, obligation beyond what you can see emotionally. And I think for children born in March, Saturn in Pisces is offering them an opportunity to anchor in their spirituality, but it is not something that will initially come readily. I think childhood could be sort of confusing between the old world of which most of your parents and grandparents have grown up in and the new world that is riddled with technology and an inner awareness that you are a co-creator within this lifetime. This stellium is foretelling great creativity and great ability to connect with the unseen. So if you are a very earthbound parent and you have a very intuitive psychic child, this could be a challenge initially for both of you as you traverse the bridge between two worlds. Venus is actually on the second. Venus is here in Aries. Venus is not really considered in favor in Aries in these times, but I believe that that is going to transform. Venus naturally rules Libra, and it's in its furthest sign from its home in Libra. Aries is the sign of the self, but it's also the sign of war, aggression, of assertion, of gladiators and athletes and heroes. And up until now, the feminine has not been celebrated that way. So I believe that that's part of the astrological transformation of Venus. But here, technically, she will be considered challenged. There could be feelings of resentment that stick every once in a while, or that the child may express itself in a way that vacillates between being very soft and being very assertive. The moon travels so quickly that I can't really address the moon in such a general video, but the moon in your child's chart will indicate how they emote and how they receive emotions and how they process the nurturing experience. We go to the second, and Mercury has retrograde. I'm sorry, Venus has retrograded. Now, when Venus is, or any planet is about to retrograde or move forward, it stations in the sky, which means it stops, it slows down, and it gives it 5 times more power than it had when it was in motion. So as we see Venus on the first of the month direct, there's still this strong power of looking forward. Now Venus has to look back, and she is about to traverse back into Pisces, which is going to make her, oh, she's also exalted in Pisces. So she goes from being uncomfortable in Aries back into very warm and compassionate and imaginative and almost magical environment. But during this process, she is examining how she perceives herself, how she is perceived by others. We see that Mercury is now at 29 degrees of Pisces, conjunct Neptune. This can be initially challenging for, again, for the mind, for how we learn, for how we perceive things and how we come up with ideas. But I think this is because these children will perceive things from, again, an intuitive place, a divine knowing. They really will not learn, like to put them in a classroom and have them sit in front of a chalkboard or a computer and run, their lessons rotely. This is not going to work, and it could inadvertently make authority figures, Saturn's represented here, you think that your child has a learning disability. I don't know if I think that's going to be true. And if there is delayed speech in some way, it is because the soul is still processing the experience of coming into the physical. When we're out of body, there's a lightness that cannot be described in the physical. And so when the body comes in, or when the soul comes into the body, there is a huge adjustment period. And I think that souls that have such a strong Piscean energy feel this even more so than maybe other signs. So Venus would be retrograde, and Venus retrogrades from almost all of March. She does not come back into, in fact, she is retrograde all of March because she re-enters on the 27th. I'm just going to quickly go to the 27th. She will re-enter Pisces. And as she comes here, so anybody who has a child that's born at the end of March, which is the Aries energy, is experiencing a child who will be potentially very brave in experiencing their duality, the part of them that is aware of the soul's expression in the physical, and yet wanting to demonstrate that energy. Venus is now part of this stellium. We see that the moon again has zipped through the zodiac, and she is conjunct the North Node and Neptune. So I believe that this is going to indicate again a child who's extremely creative, musical, potentially be a great healer, or even be a great teacher. Mercury is gone retrograde. I'm going to back up to the 14th. Mercury moved into Aries, and then it's retrograding. So, 14th is not actually Mercury. Well, it must be the 15th. Maybe it's later in the day. There we go. So again, I've got this at 12 o'clock, so it's probably later in the day when Mercury retrogrades. We can see it's at 9 degrees and 34 minutes, conjunct Venus. If your child is born in the middle of March, having these retrograde planets is not necessarily negative. What it means is that Venus is still in Aries, so she's still in a challenging dynamic, but she's very much going to be revisiting all sorts of things that have to do with how she has learned about herself, what she has been taught about, what is acceptable, how the outside world interacts with her. As a personality trait, Venus in Aries, as I said, is a strong dynamic and a bit of a challenge because women have up until now been expected to be more demure. And in Aries, it's much more assertive, as is Mercury. Mercury's expression is going to be more quick and assertive because we're doubling down on a fast energy. But in a retrograde situation, we're looking at revisiting those dynamics and actually, rather than, and when I say revisit, I mean the child will learn how to communicate in a way that affects the outcome they want versus just reacting to a situation or a conversation or a dynamic and feeling thwarted. Again, we're talking about Aries. It's very assertive. And we still have a stellium. These are a little bit less personal, this stellium, but potent nonetheless, because Saturn has not come into a conjunction with Neptune in hundreds, if not thousands of years. And this is being teed up. The conversation has started. Neptune is at 29 degrees of its ruling sign. And this is a degree that's extremely tense. Neptune knows it's moving out of its home, and it's having to incorporate all of the wisdom and all of the higher vibrational energies that it has experienced throughout its journey. Saturn is coming in to anchor that. And Saturn also represents a sense of history, a sense of human history. And it can be repressive or it can be the reward side of Saturn, which is where the endurance of that which I cannot see in Pisces and listening to a deeper part of myself actually brings reward. But it's not an easy journey. On the 19th, if your child is born around the 19th, which is pretty much the last day of Pisces, you're going to see a really big stellium here, or a really powerful dynamic, I think, because the sun is so close to Neptune. This is very duplicitous because it can be extremely spiritual, but it can also be a lot of escapism. The ego can feel completely unseen. I think that's also further evidenced by the retrogrades of Mercury and Venus, revisiting what I think, revisiting my value, revisiting my history, and is it aligned? I think these are sort of, I don't want to be frightening for parents, but it's almost like these souls have come into a fork in the road where they will either feel invisible, as if they're caught in a perpetual fog, or they will learn to listen to a voice that doesn't come through their ears. And I think that that is where we start to see that the children that are being raised right now and who will eventually have children are going to be the bridges between, will I be able to live my dream life, or now I know I'm the co-creator of my dream life. And my job is to align to that vision, to that concept, to that idea, rather than to look in my physical environment to see evidence of it. And this is also further supported by the South Node in Virgo, really eroding the processes or the analyzing of situations that are only focused in on Earth energies. One of the other things that's important is when we're looking at a karmic signature, the children that are born at this time and during this month, their rising sign, when we look at the first house, it's going to change each day. Hourly, the faster planets, the moon moves around. All of these things are going to contribute to how your child emotes and how they think. But these dynamics here set, again, a bit of a stage, or a bit of a stage is the best way to put it. Now, the other thing I want to bring up is that Mars is in Cancer right now. Mars is the I act, and this is not considered its strongest position. It's considered in fall here. So we've got Mars in fall at this time, and we've got Venus in fall, Venus in a sign where she's being sort of criticized for being too assertive, and Mars is in a sign where he's criticized for not being emotional enough, or not being able to take action as expeditiously. When Mars is in Cancer, it really has to traverse an emotional world that it is not particularly comfortable in. Mars just wants to act, move, move, move. And in order to transform into the peaceful warrior, the hero, Mars gets to become more aware of and compassionate to the energies around him. So this would be one of the things that your child will be experiencing. And also, we might want to be a little mindful about a lot of aggression in the home, because this will affect that child very, they'll have a lot of influence over the child. So that a child born in March will really need to have a good example of constructive anger. And I'm just going to say that straight up. As we get to the end of the month, I'm going to go to March 30th, we see that Neptune has moved on to the world axis at 0 degrees of Aries. Venus has re-entered Pisces. Mercury is re-entered Pisces. Again, the North Node is still here, but now the nodes are retrograde, and there's Saturn very close to these other planets. With Neptune on the world axis, this is truly the inception of the zodiac, where the soul comes into the physical experience and it is completely rewriting itself. This dynamic, again, is so rare that it hasn't happened for hundreds of years. And Saturn's conjunction that's going to be coming up is even more rare. So these children are truly coming into this planet with a bit of a division. If indeed their sense of self, their inner knowing is squelched or is limited or is put into, let's be realistic, this could very much affect the child in a challenging way. And it could shut the child down. And when we're looking at the late days in March, we're looking at the early degrees of Aries. And these children being born in the early degrees of Aries are truly new spiritual warriors coming in. So I caution you, just in the sense of they're coming in with the wound of themselves already. Each one of these, Chiron takes years to go through a sign. So most of from 2020 through 2026, Chiron is transiting Aries. And so this would be inherently, on a soul level, the chronic challenge is for them to express themselves in a brave way that will eventually turn into the wisdom that is the gift and the reward in their lifetime. So this is very, very significant. And having Mercury conjunct retrograde, these and Venus, this is extremely significant. The souls would be revisiting something and revisiting something that has to do with Mercury's practicality, Mercury's analyzing things, Mercury's information. And is the information coming from the outside resonating with what I know about the inside? And Venus being exalted, even in retrograde, kind of trumps Mercury here, because Mercury doesn't think well in Pisces. And so this would be purposeful. The soul chose to come in with this dynamic so that it would not get too married to the mind. It would be more married to what it knows on an intuitive and emotional level. And I also want to offer this because at this time, with Mars being at 23 degrees, and I think we even saw this earlier in mid-month, Mars is making a square to Chiron. So there is a dynamic where inadvertently the family or the family energy as a collective could affect this child in a way that it's not about believing everything that comes out of a child's mouth, oh, my imaginary friend, but it's also not about shutting it all the way down. That's where I'm going. We have to have balance and exploration and exploration of the imagination, because overall, and I'm going to end the share right now, overall, what I believe all of these children will be fostering and nurturing is is really being the architects of a new world. And when it comes to the month of March, they are architects of compassion, architects of a new sense of self by being aware of their co-creation, that they are, through their thoughts, through their emotions, sending messages out to the universe about what they want to experience on a soul level, because some of those may be challenges. And if they are challenges, they are the resources so that as they age, they will feel a more intentional and powerful influence over their lives and over what they experience. Pluto's move through Aquarius is ushering in a new age that for the first time, maybe in humanity's history, the awareness of the soul inhabiting a physical vessel, not my body, but the body I am borrowing for this lifetime to express myself, will be at the forefront. Oftentimes, we will see people that will, in prior generations, we had compassion for poverty or for lack. And in new generations, we're going to see an awareness that lack is an alignment to a vibration that is not pleasant. So that is where I feel might be one of the most challenging things about these children is initially your history as a parent, as a grandparent, as a teacher, as a coach, as a pastor may be that, well, this is how you create success and security. And these children will be flying by the seat of their pants, many of them. And we'll say, well, how do you know that's going to be that way? You can't see that security, but they'll feel it. And they'll understand on an intuitive level that anytime they dip down or they experience a challenge, it's to give them the resources and the inner awareness and the anchoring of their soul's knowing. I hope this helped. If you'd like to get a personal chart on your child or yourself and take a peek at what's happening, I'm happy to do so. My information is below. Reach out and we'll look at it. And please like, please subscribe, and please share. Thanks so much. Happy parenting, everybody.